These are the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM.
Now, what are your views about page 3? Is it fun? Is it innocent? Is it sexist? Is it soft porn? Lots of people do tend to have their own views about page 3, and maybe we've not talked about it recently, because I know sometime in the press some time ago there was lots of talk about page 3 and the campaign for no more page 3. Well, we are going to visit that subject right now, because my last guest this morning in the studio is Angela Towers. So Angela, a very good morning.
Good morning.
So I mean, page 3, what is it? Is it soft porn? Is it sexist? Is it... Are you just killjoys, or is it that we should leave it there for children to be able to walk into newsagents and turn the page over and often see a semi-naked smiling lady?
Well, as you say, it is both of those things. It is both sexist and outdated and inappropriate, and it is soft pornography as well. So as a campaign, as the No More Page 3 campaign, we wouldn't say that those images are inappropriate and should be banned, but they should be put in the correct context. And we don't believe a newspaper is a correct context, because as you pointed out, children can access newspapers quite easily. We have to think about what messages we're sending to small people with images like that.
So who are the people behind the campaign then?
Well, we're all volunteers. And it was set up by Lucy-Anne Holmes in August 2012, when she bought The Sun during the Olympics to read about the sporting achievements of the athletes. She thought page 3 had been dropped because it wasn't in its usual spot. She found it on page 11 and was really dismayed to find that the page 3 image was larger than the image of Jessica Ennis, who'd just won gold. And I think that speaks volumes, really, in terms of what message page 3 sends. And we think that women contribute more to society than simply looking good.
So what response do you get generally from the public? I mean, when you go out there, I know there could be views that people would say, well, there's a lot of people who are employed in the industry, and if they weren't models in that industry, you know.
Well, we get lots of different responses, and I think people on the whole often misunderstand the campaign. So we're not saying these images are wrong per se, we're saying they're in the wrong context and that they send quite a toxic message to young people and to people in general about women. Also, in terms of employment, yes, you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody's employed full-time involved with page 3, apart from perhaps the photographer. But again, it's a freelance industry, and so in terms of thinking how many jobs would be lost, that it's none really. And again, we're not saying these images are inappropriate, we're saying they shouldn't be in a newspaper. So perhaps if it's jobs that we're talking about, perhaps the Sun could create a different publication that's just for pornography, and they could put it on the top shelf, and then they could employ lots of glamour models, and that would be best case scenario for everybody.
So what response are you getting from the media moguls, etc., etc.?
We're not getting any response from the Sun itself, and we get generally a brilliant response from people, especially young women who have felt disempowered by these images being in the position that they are, and just the sheer volume of objectifying imagery of women that we have in our media currently is quite oppressive to young women. So they, lots of them, sign up to our campaign, and they love the fact that we're speaking out about it, and that's really one of the most important things for me, is that we're empowering young women to speak out about these issues. Again, people often misunderstand the campaign, so when we do get a negative response, it's often because they've misunderstood us, really.
Is there a different response from males to females when you talk about the campaign?
No, absolutely not. It's not in terms of the response, it's not a gendered response we get. We tend to get the freedom of press response, which again is not relevant to us, because we're not asking for a ban, we're not asking for legislation, we're simply raising the issue and asking that the Sun change its policy voluntarily with regards to the way it represents women. And no, we are, in terms of our supporters, it's a real mix of genders. So we've got men, women, children, everybody really who gets behind this idea that women deserve better in terms of media representation. So
you do have people who come along, because as I say, some people would say, well, it's harmless, it's fun, but there are people that maybe on the other side of the divide are truly offended by this material.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a case of offence. I think it's a case of it really affects women's lived experiences. So we've heard from young girls in schools who've told us that their male peers have been holding up page 3 in the corridors and rating them out of 10 as they walk past. You know, we've heard from women who were groomed as children, and page 3 was the vehicle, if you like, that the adult used to sort of groom them, and that's just a couple of stories that we've had hundreds, you know, from women from all different walks of life and men who've been negatively affected by it. But the beautiful thing is, as a campaign, we get these wonderful stories as well, and we get wonderful people saying, you know, carry on, keep on what you're doing, because it's so important for young women.
So how will you continue? I mean, you're doing it, are you, through media? I mean, you're here today on the radio, etc.
That's right, yeah. So I think people describe us as a social media campaign because we are very active on Twitter and Facebook. So if you want to find us, we're at No More Page 3. And also we have our petition. So please, if you want to sign it, go to change.org/No More Page 3 and you can sign there. And we just continue in our activism, and it's really fun and positive. So at the moment we're doing something in line with the Sun's decision to send out free Sun newspapers to all the households in the UK. Very tellingly, they are not including page 3 in that edition, and we think that is indicative of the fact they know that it's not appropriate to send soft porn into every household in the UK. And so off the back of that, we're doing our Keep It Up campaign. So we're asking people for video submissions of themselves, perhaps doing keepy uppies or something like that, just to support us and to say we think the Sun should indeed keep it up and keep page 3 out of the newspaper.
So they actually have omitted it out of the free newspaper then?
That's right, yeah.
And I mean, I would imagine you also have lots of support in Liverpool, where the Sun is probably not the most favourite newspaper.
Well, we do, yeah, and I know that it's a supremely sensitive issue in Liverpool, and we support them very much in their reasons why they wouldn't support the Sun newspaper.
I mean, over the years, there's always been the kind of discussion about would it be more appropriate if page 3 was shared with men who were semi-naked on page 3. Would that make a difference?
Why do we have to objectify anybody in a news? Perhaps we could put news on the 3rd page of the newspaper. Wouldn't that be better? Yeah, that's our stance on it, really. I mean, we're all human. We do like looking at these images, I suppose. But is the newspaper the correct place for them? And we don't think so.
And what about response from politicians? Have you taken this to politicians?
Oh, this is very interesting. So we have, I don't know the exact number, but we have a lot of politicians who signed our letter to the editor of The Sun. So if you go onto our website, you'll be able to find it. It's housed there. And also we got support from the Welsh Assembly and in Scottish Parliament. It was unanimous in both of those parliaments that they support the objectives of our campaign. The only place we haven't got full support is in England, unfortunately.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
and particularly the Conservative Party, something like 2% of those have signed, whereas the Labour Party, it's over 50.
So that campaign is ongoing then with politicians?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, how many people generally? This is a campaign across the country, is it? Are you based in Preston?
Well, no, we're not. We're sort of a virtual campaign. So there's, as I say, we're made up of volunteers and we're based all over the country. And in terms of support, we have over 193,000 signatures on the petition. And again, if you go onto our website, something very important which we have on there is the letter from organisations and charities where they've put quotes of support onto a letter to the editor to say why they support our objectives. And it's amazing groups such as the Girl Guides, Women's Aid, Rape Crisis, that have put some amazing quotes on there as to why it's important that the media take responsibility for how they represent women.
And of course people do have the choice, don't they, not to buy the newspaper, and I take it that one thing that would impact on the newspaper is the fact that if people stop buying it, because I mean they do target particularly blue collar workers and people who they must feel buy the newspaper, and that page 3 is an important reason for people buying that newspaper.
Well, there's a couple of things there. In terms of whether or not people buy it for page 3, I'm not entirely sure. I would suggest that actually, because the Sun hasn't tried having the newspaper without page 3. They don't actually know how many people avoid buying it because of page 3. Added to that, page 3 affects us all because it's the widest read newspaper in our country, and the biggest image of a woman on any given day is the one where she's showing her breasts to men, essentially. So it does affect us all, whether we buy it or not. Again, as well, we get lots of funny stories from people who have been sitting on public transport, sat next to people who are reading The Sun, and you do see it everywhere. You see it in coffee shops, you see it in cafes, you see it in doctors' surgeries and waiting rooms. Everywhere it's seen, and that is part of the issue, is that by having it in a newspaper, it normalises these images and the way they've infiltrated the mainstream media, and they shouldn't be there in that way. They should be in appropriate context, because not only can it make people feel uncomfortable, but we have to think about the message that it sends.
So what do you think will bring about change? Is it going to be people power?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. We've seen lots of strange behaviours from The Sun ever since our campaign was conceived. And one of them is, of course, the fact that they're sending these free copies out without page 3. I think they're thinking about it very carefully, and we'll see what happens. But without doubt, when it goes, it will be down to the pressure that our wonderful supporters have been putting on them.
And where can people find out more about the campaign then?
So they can visit nomorepage3.org, and that's our website, and you can find out everything on there about us. Particularly if you're on the fence about the issue, have a look at our FAQs section, and that should answer any questions that you have. Also, we're very lovely and friendly, so tweet us, Facebook us, anything, and we'll always respond to you. And again, please sign the petition.
And we've talked about politicians, etc. Are there any other specific areas that you're really wanting to target? I mean, you mentioned that you can go into doctor surgeries, you can go wherever where there are newspapers, and the newspaper will be there. So is that also a part of the campaign, trying to raise awareness, say, with people who display it in kind of public areas? Yeah,
definitely. I think our supporters take that to heart, definitely, and they will do things like, if their local coffee shop stocks it, they'll say something and they'll ask them not to. And we've had lots of incidences of that where places have said, actually, you're right, it's not appropriate to have that in a family area, basically, and they've got rid of it. Again, universities are a big part of our campaign, so lots of university campuses have declined from selling The Sun on campus until it gets rid of page 3. I don't know the exact number, but we've got a lot of universities that are doing that at the moment. And also, debates in universities about page 3 and about the representation of women in the media. It's a huge national conversation that's happening as a result, and it's brilliant.
Lovely. Well, Angela, can I thank you for coming in this morning and talking to us? I mean, we've not got anybody from The Sun to put their view forward on air,
no.
But thank you for coming in. And just tell us again where people can find the website.
So it's nomorepage3.org, or you can sign the petition at change.org/nomorepage3.
Lovely. Nice meeting you, and thank you for coming on to Chat City.
Thank you.
If you've got news, views or events you'd like to share with us and the Chat City team, why not give us an email? chatcity@preston.fm.